So we have a new report from Allianz on shipping and maritime industry around the world, which was released a few days ago. The report shows that while shipping losses are falling, the Russia's war in Ukraine, costly issues with large vessels, shipping boom and sustainability concerns are muddying up the waters for the industry. Let's set sailing right now on a conversation around that sector as Rahul Khana, the global head in charge of marine risks at Allianz, joins me to discuss this. Good evening to you, Rahul. It's good to see you again on the show. It's been quite some time. Thanks for coming through.
Good evening to you as well.
Great. Thank you so much. Summarize for me your latest safety and shipping review report for this month. What new developments have been highlighted?
Well, thank you. And I think from last year, if you remember, we discussed a lot about COVID. The last couple of years have been a lot about COVID. This year, the 2021 year, has also been very interesting because of certain other reasons. I think industry overall has been dealing with the aftermaths of COVID. The rebound in the economy was pretty good. That meant a boom time for shipping. Last year, there was a record number of charter rates have gone through the roofs, the commodity prices have gone up, and the congestion in ports, etc., is at an almost all-time high. But looking at the losses and safety angle of the industry first, I think, as you rightly said, the total losses have continued to fall, which is a great news. I think last year we saw 54 total losses in the shipping industry, which is down, continues the downward trend. And in the last 10 years, this is a 57% decline in total losses, which is a great accomplishment considering that the challenges the shipping industry faces from all different aspects. But last year, I think the biggest challenges that we've seen is obviously the Ukraine-Russia conflict that has impacted the shipping industry on various different fronts. Apart from that, I think we have also seen key issues re-emerging, which is fires on container ships, fires on the car carriers, the ro-ro ships as we call them, and the expenses that have mushroomed because of the losses. The salvage and wreck removal of these vessels and some of these incidents have been unprecedented in the last year, and then we've seen a record number of claims coming in from quantum perspective from some of these incidences that we've seen. I think the other major issue that we've seen and we've tried to highlight is the global supply chains, which were already impacted by COVID in the last few years. But Ukraine crisis has actually exacerbated that. And coupled with the inflationary pressures that we are seeing today across the globe, that is causing empty shelves pretty much across the world in many markets. And the demand side has gone up considerably, while supply isn't exactly able to match up. The other part is that the sanctions that has kicked in because of the result of the conflict is causing another pain to the shipping industry, which we'll talk about a little later. But I think the one key issue that also is highlighted in the report is the decarbonization of shipping in line with the Paris Accords or in line with our climate change targets that the industry has adopted. And we think that in the next 5 to 10 years, this is going to be the major impact area for shipping and an area where which shipping industry will have to pull in a lot of resources, including in capital investments, including new technology, including new ways of working, skill improvements in the crew, and so on. So there's plenty of plethora of impact that decarbonization of shipping or climate change responsibility which the shipping industry needs to take on will have an impact on the industry overall.
Well, in terms of the Russia-Ukraine crisis and the multiple impact on the world of shipping right now, what are the four companies and industry experts saying, including yourself, in terms of what this will mean for them in the short to the medium term? Like you mentioned, the sanctions are coming through. You can't lift Russian oil. The whole industry is unpacking, as it were. Costs, insurance, freight, and other things are coming into play. So how difficult will this be for the shipping and the maritime industry this year into the next one?
Yes, I've been talking about the conflict. I think this conflict has impacted shipping industry in 3-4 major ways. I think one of the first one I think I should highlight is is the impact on the crews and the human resources side of shipping. At the time of the war started, there were about 2,000 crew members stuck in the Black Sea area, which was shut down, and they were at stake. Their lives were at stake, and unfortunately, in many of the instances that we saw during the conflict, many crew members lost their lives, including some of the ships which were bombed. That threat continues as the conflict rages on. A lot of ports and terminals within the Black Sea area have come under attack, especially the Ukrainian ones, and this has caused an already critical situation that we had regarding the crew members. I think some of the reports are saying that we may have as much as 20,000 crew member shortages over the next decade or so. That's what we're expecting, and considering that Russia and Ukraine provide 10 and 4% respectively of the crew members on ships, this situation gets even worsened. We need a lot of crew members, which already felt the impacts of COVID, and quite a few of them left shipping altogether because of the hardship they faced in the 2 years prior to today. And now the war has impacted that. So that's one impact of the war. I think the second impact that we see is on the global supply chains. Again, during the COVID times, the supply chains were impacted because of the supply chain imbalance, the demand-supply imbalance. We are seeing hundreds of vessels queued up outside Los Angeles Long Beach Harbor. China had COVID blockages earlier this year. There's a long queue of vessels ready to load but can't enter China at the moment, and the queues are meaning that the trade balance has been impacted as well. And because of the war, the products that are exported from Russia and Ukraine have obviously suffered. Grain exports from Russia and Ukraine is one of the top ones that has been impacted, and there's a lot of raw materials which are also coming out of these two countries, which can't make their way out. Typically in the industries like automotives and electronics and agriculture, obviously. So there's been this supply chain disruption, and I think this will have an impact in typically redrawing the supply chain routes across the globe. And it doesn't happen overnight. If a lot of importers are getting their goods from these regions and the supply chain is disrupted today, it's going to take a lot of time and money to find alternative solutions. And the impact of that is that we are going to see a lot more delays, a lot more goods, a lot more waiting for common man for their things like furnitures or electronics or everything. And we are already seeing how long it takes to get a car these days. And all this is impacted because of the supply chain issues that we are seeing. I think you talked about the ban, the expected ban on Russian oil and gas by EU and the US. That may also have a major impact on how the supply chains for oil is drawn across. Now, a lot of consumers in the West have been traditionally reliant on the Russian oil and gas. And if these bans go through, there's no straightforward, easy answer. I'm sure the other countries, other suppliers of oil will provide alternatives and would be ready to provide these supplies, but it takes time. And in the meantime, there's definitely shortages across the Western world.
Rahul, let's sum it up around decarbonization. What new risk in the global shipping industry, are we seeing from decarbonization? It said that we need to develop a new circular economy, not the way we knew everything that used to be. It's a new normal. Is this a deglobalization of what we used to know? Because we need to reduce the vessels moving around to reduce our carbon footprint here and the impact on climate. Talk to me about this to sum it up, this conversation.
Yeah, the climate change, I think, as I was saying, it's going to be the biggest challenge our industry has faced in a long time. And I think definitely the key critical issue in front of shipping community in the next 5 to 10 to 15 years. Now, the targets that they have agreed upon is 50% reduction in the CO2 emissions from 2008 levels by 2050. But there's a lot of pressure on shipping industry to actually go to net zero targets by 2050, not just the 50% reductions. And some of the prudent ship owners and charterers have already agreed to that, and they are trying to make sure that we can achieve these targets. Now, how are we going to achieve these targets is again not straightforward. There is no straightforward solution or a single solution which is going to get there. There's a lot of use of the cleaner fuels like LNG today on ships. A lot of ships are being converted to use LNG instead of the black tarry heavy fuel that is traditionally used on ships. But that is not going to take us to our 2050 targets. So we are looking at alternative fuels. We are looking at new fuels like hydrogen, ammonia, methane, and some of the companies have already ordered new ships which are running on these alternative fuels. But the issue, the risk here is that it takes a long time of empirical data and evidence to understand the risk that comes with these new fuels and how do they impact the engines and how are we going to see machinery damage losses. We already know that the maximum number of incidents
Okay.
happen because of machinery damage. And hence, that's one of the key risks that we face. And the shortage of crew in the skilled crew that needs to use this technology is going to be other risk that we'll face going forward.
Rahul Khana, Global Head in charge of Marine Risk at Allianz. We're going to check in with you much later with your industry. Thank you so much for bringing us up to speed.